Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. To wrap up this latest bat of my Symmetra fever, I decided to concept 30 powers/items for her whenever she makes it to Stadium mode. I have this list separated into two parts. Powers that bring back a familiar aspect of Sim, either through her old versions or experimental changes, and then there's a section of original powers concepted by me. Keep in mind that numbers can always be changed, it's the principle that matters. Let's start with familiar powers. Power 1, Flexibility. Photon Barrier now locks onto opponents, but its damage is reduced. In regards to the reduced damage, we'll go with 2.0's 30, 60, 120 DPS. I think this power would offer an interesting early game choice for Sim players. Do you take the leniency of the 2.0 beam over the higher damage potential of the 3.0 beam? Power 2, Piercing Performance. Photon Projector's secondary fire now pierces through barriers and enemies. Despite being a pullover from 2.0, this power would be unchained on the current speedy orbs, giving Sim a stronger option to deal with groups. Power 3, Portable Photon Barrier. Double tap melee to deploy a moving photon barrier with 1000 HP. This ability is on a 10-second cooldown. Our favorite pot lid returns with this power. Ideally, I would like to see the Photon Barrier as a third ability, rather than replacing the turrets or the TP. Personally, I'd rather have the ability bound to either the 1 or 2 key, which is what you use to swap weapons on PC, but I was told the binding for controller is annoying, hence for the double tap melee option. I think the barrier should retain its 10-second cooldown, but possibly have its HP scaled down to reflect the current state of shields. Scaling ability power would buff the shield's health. Having another ability in your arsenal, especially one that blocks damage, could potentially make this a must-pick for Sim. Power 4, Sentry Capacity. Increase your sentry turret capacity by 3. This power takes the name from the current minor perk available to Sim. However, this power is beefed up to return you to the initial capacity of 6 turrets from Symmetra's release. Possibly as a downside, they could return the turrets to 1 HP, but I don't think that's necessary. This perk would allow Sim greater map coverage, and could play nicely into ability power builds. I do worry that if this power were to make it in, it would limit what other powers Symmetra could receive in regards to her turrets, since you could have 6 of them out at once. Power 5, Shield Generator. Placing your teleporter grants you and nearby allies 75 overhealth for 10 seconds. Our favorite retired ultimate returns from the nursing home with this one. This perk would allow Sim to bolster her team for a short time. Definitely useful if your supports are playing more aggro, or if you want to enable a dive. Power 6, Sim's Cab Service. Your teleporter now lasts indefinitely until destroyed. Truthfully, this was my least favorite version of Symmetra's TP. I know many players like this iteration of it, but I was not one of them. The main reason is the cooldown. The cooldown on a taxi TP wouldn't start until the teleporter was destroyed, as opposed to live, where the cooldown starts immediately upon placing it. Basically, if you keep the TP alive for 10 seconds on live, you would have a 2-second cooldown between teleporters. With the taxi TP, you would still have that 12-second timer. Personally, I feel that the taxi teleporter should be an item, rather than a whole power. Power 7, Shield Battery. Standing near your teleporter heals you for 30 health per second. This is another tweaked pullover from Sim's current perks. While Shield Battery is my favorite, I feel that the healing of just 20 health per second is so measly for a major perk. Hence why I bumped this up to 30. At 30 shields per second, the power matches the healing of Zenyatta's Harmony Orb. However, do note, this only applies to Sim's shield HP. I could see this perk pairing nicely with the lifesteal build. Power 8, Advanced Teleportation. Teleporter range is increased by 50%. Our last pullover from Sim's perks, a direct pullover at that. I feel that the perk is fine as is, and could be either a power or an item. Power 9, The Path Less Traveled. Teleporter now places the exit at your location, while an entrance is placed in spawn. Teleporter is limited to 6 uses per round. The OG teleporter returns with this one. I could see this power being situational though. If you're playing with a team that dies often, or if you're on a push map, I could see the power having some use cases. Power 10. Injured? Go find. Sentry turrets gain a secondary beam that targets allies, healing them for 30 health per second and boosting their move speed by 15% for 3 seconds. Afterwards, they incur a 1-second internal cooldown. This is my ideal version of healing turrets. For one experimental in the past, Symmetra was granted healing turrets that healed for a measly 20 health per second and had no logic to them. They would attach to the first ally in range and wouldn't change targets unless they were destroyed or the ally left that range. The 1-second internal cooldown between heals is to remedy that. In addition, I upped the turret's healing from 20 to 30 healing per second, and I attached a 15% speed boost to allies affected. It should be noted that this power will not remove the damaging aspect of the turrets. They would be capable of healing and damage at the same time. While this sounds pretty strong, I should remind you the turrets can be knocked out with a single punch. Power 11. Bold Fashion. Sentry turrets can be attached to allies, where they will float behind them. Their size is also reduced by 10%. This power pulls from Symmetra's most recent April Fool's changes. I had a lot of fun with the top hat turrets, and I'd love to play with them again. One complaint from the community, though, is that the turrets would block your sight if you were looking up. That's the reason for the size reduction, as well as the position of the turret being behind the ally, rather than on top. This power would be ideal when paired with an ally flanker. Power 12. Entrapping Design. Sentry turret's slow potential is increased by 10%. This is our last returning aspect of Sim. This perk would bump the slow of each turret up from 15% to 25%. After playing 2.0 again, I realized why her turrets felt so much better when compared to live. Despite having the same 30 DPS, the turrets in the past slowed for 25%. The stronger slow made a single turret a higher threat. This power, or could also be an item, would return that strength to the turrets. That wraps up powers that would be returning features of Symmetra. I think most of these would accomplish my wish of creating a hybrid between 2.0 and 3.0 to create a best of both worlds so that every Sim player can enjoy their character together. Going forward, let's discuss some new power ideas I've had. Power 13, Light Show. Photon Projector's beam changed to a second enemy within 5 meters, dealing 50% less damage. This power would remedy one of my least favorite aspects about the 3.0 beam, that being enemies body blocking for each other. With this power, if 2 enemies are together, 2 enemies are taking damage, albeit one is at a reduced rate. At 50% reduced damage, the Photon Projector would deal 30 DPS at level 1, 60 at level 2, and 90 at level 3. Power 14, Hardlight Fireworks. Double the explosion radius of energy orbs. This power would up the AoE from 2 meters to 4 meters, the same AoE as Tracer's Pulse Bomb. This power would allow Sim to be an AoE menace by constantly applying the anti-healing passive. I do worry about the strength of this power though, since the AoE damage drop-off is pretty intense on the orbs. Power 15, Overflowing Light. Charging an orb for over 1 second increases its size by up to 50% and its damage by 25%. I wanted to add a power that allows you to overcharge the Photon Projector. I decided against adding that to the beam since the Overwatch community hates it enough as is. Instead, I opted for this. This power allows Sim to overcharge her orbs. An overcharged orb would deal 125 damage, allowing Sim to once again 2-tap standard health heroes, at least in the early game. Power 16, Wormhole. While Teleporter is active, press Interact to return to the entrance. 1 use per teleport. One of the strongest talents from Paladins makes its way to Overwatch with this power. The key trait to note is that returning to the entrance can occur at any time, from any location, so long as your teleporter lives. Sims with this power can take very risky engagements and get out safely, so long as the teleporter stays safe. This will be Sim's ultimate risk-reward power. Power 17, Valet Service. Placing a teleporter summons a sentry turret at the entrance and exit that lasts for 5 seconds or until destroyed. This power would be a turret bomber's dream come true. On top of bolstering a TP bomb, I can see this perk as a way to temporarily increase your turret count to 5 if placed optimally. Alternatively, this power can be used if you need a turret in a pinch. Power 18, Thinking with Portals. The teleporter exit can be placed on ceilings and walls. Many years ago, Symmetra's teleporter got bugged in one PTR. You guys remember those? Anyways, the bug was that Symmetra could place her teleporter on some slanted surfaces, and it would then slide off said surface until it hit the ground. This power takes that idea of unchaining the teleporter by allowing Sim to place it anywhere. You can place it on the ceiling, you can place it on a wall, the potential is limitless. Of all my new power ideas, this one is my favorite. I would love to try this in-game. Power 19, Controlled Chaos. Enemies within 8 meters of a teleporter exit are slowed by 20% and pulled to its center. This power would grant Sim players access to some strong crowd control. It could also allow her to have stronger TP bombs. I could see this power pairing well with the bonus AoE talent on orbs. Do note that the slow and pull can be ended early by destroying the teleporter. Power 20, In Brightest Day. Sentry turrets can attack targets while airborne. This is one suggestion that has been floating around ever since the 3.0 rework. This power would be excellent against enemies who can consistently escape Sim's beam range. The slow will allow Symmetra to catch up to the retreating enemy, or the damage from the turrets will kill the enemy outright. Power 21, Resonance. Sentry turret damage is doubled, but they can only attack for 5 seconds before exploding, dealing 50 damage in an 8-meter AoE. The explosion also occurs if they are destroyed by an enemy. This power will up the turret's DPS to 60 per second. On top of having a higher upfront impact, this power will thrive against enemies who are keen on destroying turrets quickly. If they are up close, they will be punished with 50 damage. This is one of those perks where the numbers might have to be changed though. Raise a hand for the RYC. Power 22, Big Brother. Sentry turret's reveal lasts for an additional 2 seconds. Deal 10% more weapon damage to revealed enemies. Originally, I had this power just increase the reveal duration from the turrets, but that sounded pretty boring, so I added the 10% damage buff to the photon projector on revealed enemies. Not only will this perk buff Sim's power against a foe being zapped by a turret, but it will also aid against those who destroy her turrets, since the reveal and damage boost will linger for 3 seconds. It also adds a minor synergy with other heroes who can reveal enemies, since Sim could deal bonus damage against them. In the early game, an orb would go from 100 damage to 110, while the 3.0 beam would go from 60, 120, 180 DPS to 66, 132, 198 DPS. Power 23, Algorithmic Destruction. Sentry turrets deal a bonus 5% of the target's max HP as damage every 1 second. I genuinely worry about Sim's turrets in a stadium setting. Due to the constantly scaling health pools, I foresee the pathetic 30 DPS turrets struggling past the first round. Assuming Sim doesn't get a power or item for an increase to her turret count, this power will allow the turrets to keep up in the late game. In the early game, against a 250 HP hero, a single turret's DPS will be up from 30 to 42. Against a 500 HP tank, the DPS will be up from 30 to 55. I know that some will say to invest in ability power, but the issue with that is that all the items will scale off of the base 30 DPS, which is really low. Power 24, Miniature Photon Barriers. While airborne, sentry turrets deploy a photon barrier with 200 HP. This is a tweaked version of the 2.0 barrier. Instead of it being its own ability, the barrier is tied to the turrets. On top of providing small instances of damage mitigation for you and your team, this power will temporarily safeguard the turrets while they're airborne. Power 25, Perfect Harmony. For every 2 seconds that a sentry turret deals damage, it ramps up the photon projector 1 level. Another idea I've seen circling around for eons at this point. This power would allow Sims with good turret placement to constantly stay ahead on charge level for their projector. Power 26, My Reality. Sentry turrets now hinder enemies after damaging them for 2 seconds. One idea I've been wanting since the 2.0 days. Mobility in Overwatch runs rampant, with very little to shut it down. This power would allow Sim to halt movement skills against those who sit in a turret's beam. While I like this power idea, I could see the general Overwatch community hating it with a passion. I should mention that the hinder would stop immediately when a turret is destroyed or not dealing damage. Power 27, Expanded Reach. Sentry turret range is increased by 50%. This power would up the turret's range from 10 meters to 15 meters. I could see this one being a purchasable item to bolster turret builds. Power 28, Quantity over Quality. Photon Barrier costs 33% ultimate charge, but lasts for 3 seconds with 1000 HP. This power sacrifices the duration of Photon Barrier in exchange for small bursts of defense. Sims with the talent would have to be extra mindful of how they use Barrier. This talent could potentially be OP though, hence for the HP taking a hit too. Power 29, Warped Reality. Photon Barrier grants a 30% speed boost to allies who touch it. Enemies who touch it take 30 damage per second and are slowed by 15%. Another one I've seen floating around for eons. This power would grant Sim and her team a massive advantage when the wall is up. Besides the speed boost, this power will encourage Sim's team to keep enemies touching the barrier, so they could take bonus damage and be slowed from it. Power 30, Shield Siphon. Double the shield regen provided by Photon Projector when damaging enemy shields. This is one stat that I genuinely forgot existed on the current version of Symmetra. Anyways, this last power will change the healing from 10, 20, 30 per second to 20, 40, 60 per second. When at max charge, the self-healing against shields will match Mercy's staff. Keep in mind, this passive only applies against barriers and shield HP. This power, or potentially item, will be excellent against shield-heavy teams and would pair nicely into a lifesteal build. Alrighty, that wraps up some powers I'd like to see for when Symmetra is added to Stadium. As I mentioned, if done correctly, I think Stadium can finally accomplish my want of creating a version of Symmetra that satisfies both the 2.0 mains and the 3.0 mains. What would you like to see from Symmetra in Stadium? What did you think of these power suggestions? Overpowered, underpowered, fun, boring? Let me know down below. I got one last sim-related video for this bout of Sim Fever. Over on the Jam channel, we take Sim's cab service to the streets of Need for Speed Unbound. If that sounds interesting, feel free to check the video out in the end screen. Don't forget to clap that like button and laser down that sub button. Smashing the bell is also a great way to stay in the loop. And as always, I'm YellowNinja, and peace.